So just a little bit about me before we get started. I'm a junior at Northwestern. I'm currently studying music composition and mechanical engineering, and also doing a lot of bass clarinet stuff on the side, both in my composition and just playing outside of composition. Yeah, and then I'm also the sole proprietor of Ricochet Music Enterprises, which is a company I started this past year to sell a microphone for singing and playing purposes for musicians. So, yeah. So before we get started, just a quick little semantics. So I might refer to both of these things, but singing and playing and vocalization are like essentially the same thing. I haven't been able to figure out like why they're different. So if you hear me referring to either one, they refer to the same thing. Growling, I consider different. So I like to think of growling as it's unpitched. So like often it's used in jazz and like other settings where the performer's not really thinking about like what pitch they're playing. It's just creating that distorting effect. So it's not quite the same thing. It's also not humming. So humming is a different technique that I'll get into slightly a little bit, but it's not singing and playing. So just to know that. Also, just want to give a disclaimer as you're working on this technique. Many reeds have been harmed in the development of this technique. I found there's a tendency for reeds to just like get absolutely destroyed really quickly when you're singing and playing. So when you're starting out, definitely recommend using like reeds that you don't like as much. I've recently been using a synthetic reed and I found that works really well, and it's been saving me a lot of reeds. So yeah, cool. So before we get like to integrating the voice and the instrument, I just want to talk a bit about like the voice and how it connects to the voice and the instrument and how we like can use them together. So when we're applying it to like clarinets, you gotta be producing air in order to make it work, right? So since we're creating and we're singing like out of our mouth, and that's going straightly into the mouthpiece, whatever we do has to be producing air, which is why humming doesn't work because it's not producing air out of our mouth. There are two main voices that we can use like while singing and playing, chest voice and falsetto. I'm still working on trying to learn how to use falsetto. It's really not utilized too much, and this is mostly due to the fact that it's a lot harder to control since there's minimal air going into the like going out of your mouth into the instrument. So when you're practicing this, really try to focus on using your chest voice. It'll make it a lot easier and allow you to like use a lot more air and have a lot more control. When you're doing this as well, the vowels that I've found most similarly reflect what you're using on the instrument are oo, o, and ah vowels. So a lot of the lower ones where your tongue is more depressed, and it's more reflective of our embouchure when we're playing clarinet. So as well, when we're like singing and doing practice like off of the instrument, especially when you're learning new parts in the voice parts, some of the articulations that I found particularly helpful are like v, m, h, and not like just not using any. So like just doing like ooh. I found these type of articulations kind of best simulate like using your tongue or just like using like air attacks, which is often what we have to do when you're combining the technique with playing, right? So yeah, the most important thing, especially since we're using these lower vowels, is to keep your voice out of your throat and minimize throat tension. This is like a really important thing that I found makes a huge impact on both like intonation, like your strain while playing and how long you can like effectively practice it, as well as your ability to project off of the instrument and be able to like separate your volume of your voice and your instrument. And the key to this is like thinking like you're an opera singer. So opera singers, when they project, they're raising their soft palate in the back here. And when they do that, it kind of helps them like actually like really project, like the ones that, you know, are in a concert hall projecting over an orchestra. Their soft palate is raised and they're like creating a lot of resonance within their body and within their throat. So when we sing and play, we have to make sure we're doing the same thing and making sure that we raise our soft palate. A thing you can do to check, and like it's kind of a quick hack, but like as you're trying to get used to feeling when you're like keeping your voice elevated versus like it's down here in your throat, is you can pinch your nose. So if you're talking or you're singing more in your throat and it's all down here in your chest and your throat, you can pinch your nose, and as you pinch your nose, it'll get kind of nasally. So if I'm talking like this and then I pinch my nose, it'll get really like closed off and like squeezy kind of. And it'll feel really weird. That's happening because like your soft palate is lowered. Well, you'll notice if you raise your soft palate and you're talking more open and if you pinch your nose, you won't actually hear any change and you won't really feel any change in your speaking. So it's like a little quick kind of thing to kind of feel how you need to raise your soft palate and like kind of keeping everything a little bit more up and free in the back. You'll also find when you're singing especially, it'll feel a little bit more nasally when you're kind of a little bit more up in your mouth, and that's a good thing. That'll help you project more. This really is like, I mean, I can't emphasize it enough, like the key to safe practice and like effortless projection. I spent a lot of my beginning time learning this technique without like being safe and proper about like keeping my voice out of my throat, and it created a lot more tension for me and a lot more like pain than I ever should have had when I was practicing. And so it's really important that you do this just for the like health of your voice. So yeah, let's just talk a little bit of some vocal exercises. About like 5 minutes per practice session before you get like started on your instrument is really helpful. A couple of things you can do to just start like by relaxing your jaw and your tongue and your mouth is just lip buzz glisses. So just like up to a fifth, like. And if that's not like, if the buzz isn't happening, you can also just use and we're just trying to like buzz the mouth, like just kind of relax it out. You can also, my vocal teacher taught me about like just shaking my jaw and tongue. So you can just like, and it feels really dumb. However, it does kind of loosen things up. So I find it's helpful. The next exercise, really helpful for kind of focusing on keeping your like sound open. I find it's like really good to recenter when you're feeling like you're singing too much in your throat. And it's just finding a single pitch, like find something that's like, I mean, you can go throughout your range and practice this. And you're just changing the vowel that you're using and trying to keep it as smooth and connected as possible without dipping, like without it letting it drop into your throat, because it'll have a tendency to do that as you go from na, no, and nu to kind of be down here. And you want to keep it all up here and feeling really resonant. Ideally, like kind of hearing some overtones. So as an example, ni, ne, na, no, nu. And if I was not keeping everything up here, that would instead sound like ni, ne, na, no, nu. And you can kind of hear it. It just sounds less. It's like duller, right? And for me, from like a feeling perspective, like there's a lot of attention here in the front of my throat and kind of like up toward my ears, instead of like the vibration where you want it to feel in resonance, like right here in your face, like a little bit more up and forward. Another good one is just like simple like slurs up and down on ah. And then you can go from that to just 5-note scales up and down on ma. So like ma, 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 ma. And again, same sort of stuff. You're really focusing on projecting and like feeling everything like nice and high, like up here in your face rather than down here. So really like opening up and lifting your soft palate. Same sort of stuff applies with just using like an oo syllable. This is like often when I'm practicing pieces. You can just practice with like no articulation and really focusing on keeping your pitches clean between notes and not like sliding too much. And again, focusing on staying out of your throat. So now that we've kind of gone over some things to do like with your voice, we can talk about like applying it to the instrument. So the first thing I like to do before like getting to the instrument is actually just separating the instrument from the mouthpiece and just working with the mouthpiece in the neck or the mouthpiece in the barrel. You can also just work with the mouthpiece, but I feel like it's so high. Like for me personally, it never quite worked well. I know some people have had some success with that though. So you can try either one and feel what works for you. And before we even play, just focus on like putting your mouthpiece in your mouth, find that embouchure, and then try singing into it. And like, again, remember keeping your mouth open and like no throat tension. And then just try like sustaining a single pitch, like stopping, starting, stopping, starting. And then you can try scales and patterns. And this is all before you even try playing. Just get used to having a mouthpiece in your mouth while you're trying to sing. So, And again, you're using like kind of a hoo, ha kind of vowels, which will really help you with getting a nice sound. Once you feel good about that, you can start integrating singing and playing with the mouthpiece and then neck or barrel, focusing on, again, relaxing your throat, making sure you don't have tension there, keeping your embouchure firm and relaxing your tongue. So making sure you're not pulling your tongue back, again, because that'll lead to throat tension, and making sure that you're not like loosening your embouchure too much so that you get a lot of air leaking out the sides, or you get like a really flat sound. What really helps is starting with like playing and then adding the voice, especially when you're first getting used to it. And I also find, just like, especially since we're working with just like a mouthpiece and like a barrel or neck, like find those consonant intervals where you minimize beating, and just focus on like trying to tune to those and like getting used to what it feels like without any of the extra stuff with trying to make your instrument sound nice, just with your neck and your mouthpiece, just trying to do that. So for example, and really trying to make it like a nice consistent sound. You'll find it's a lot easier if you play soft and then try to sing over that. Often playing really loud, especially at the beginning, can create a lot of tension. So try like a mezzo piano to mezzo forte when you're starting out. And as you feel more comfortable and as you're like getting more used to it, you can try using like a forte or fortissimo, but you really want to try to minimize how much you're pushing rather than just kind of letting the sound be. Yeah. So once you feel pretty good about being on the neck and like getting like a nice sound with the neck and the mouthpiece, you can add your instrument and start just practicing going between the two. So going between like a played pitch and then a sung pitch, and focus on like your intonation of your sung pitch, especially after you've just played your pitch. So try to match your instrument, your intonation of your horn, and then kind of feel how your embouchure changes between the two of them. So for example, and it's like projection is not as important for this, but just really focusing on like trying to feel how your embouchure shifts between the two of them and trying to find kind of how you can connect the two together. So the next thing you can practice is, again, because it's a lot easier to just focus on the voice when you're not trying to worry about getting them to start together. Start with the instrument first and then add the voice and just go up a pattern. And again, remember to play soft because it'll be a lot easier to hear your voice and match it, and also to like be able to actually not worry about strain, right? So the other thing I'd recommend, you can start with unison. I found when I was first learning, unisons were really hard, and octaves were a lot easier, especially octaves where you're singing above the played pitch. So you can always start with that, and then once that feels more comfortable, you can start adding the unisons. Unisons and octaves will really tell you if you're in tune with yourself, because you'll hear a lot of beating as soon as you're barely out of tune. So that's like, it's a good way to check with yourself. So for example, and then once you feel comfortable with that, you can start integrating it with patterns and focusing on the same stuff, just like going through and doing a pattern or scale. I like to do this like in my Behrman book, just like, pick a pattern, like pick a thirds from like C major and just like do that in unisons or in another interval. If you're going flat or you're finding your tongue is recessing, that's a sign that you're in your throat. So again, like I would recommend just like starting with the neck and the mouthpiece and just like go back to really trying to like sing and then make sure you're lifting up your soft palate and really thinking about it as you're doing it, and building that habit so then over time you don't have to think about it as much. Once you're getting like a good feeling of this, you can start developing flexibility. So these like exercises can be done more out of order, like especially in a practice session when you're working on different things and working on like a piece for this. Like you're gonna have to be proficient at all this. So you can kind of work through all of these different areas. The first one is just intervals. So a good method for whenever you're learning or like figuring out an interval, just play the pitch that you're singing, sing the pitch, and then play and sing together. And just make sure you're locked in on like knowing exactly what you need to sing and then finding it. I like using scales, patterns. If you're working through a piece, there's a lot of pieces, especially like my pieces, Evan Zaporin's pieces. There's a lot of pieces out there that, like, or of the limited number of pieces out there, a lot of them incorporate this chorale like interval relationships between the notes in a very easy way to kind of practice. So that's a good way to start. Fifths and other consonant intervals are going to be easiest to lock in on. And so what I mean by lock in on is finding the resonance of the interval and like feeling it in your face. This technique is like weirdly like a very different experience for the performer than it is for the listener. And especially if you're on like bass clarinet or lower clarinet, you'll feel it like just like you do on like your low C. You're gonna feel it like completely vibrating your face. And even on like B flat clarinet, it's gonna be a very noticeable thing. And so different intervals have different feelings. And a thing that I'd recommend doing is, as you're practicing these things, go slow and kind of start to feel what different intervals, like how they vibrate. And as you do this, you can lock into that feeling of vibration. And as you're going through and playing a piece, you'll kind of know what's in tune based on like if it feels right. Because you're often tuning these just like you would tune in an ensemble of just intonation, right? So just like in that, where it kind of locks in, the same sort of thing applies with singing and playing. Another thing that's like really important, especially in a lot of the repertoire that's currently out there, is being able to drone. Especially droning with the voice seems to be, well, it is like a common thing among a lot of pieces. And then there's also several examples of sustaining with the instrument and then moving with the voice. So with both of these, like you're focusing on the same stuff between the two of them, like really steady sustains, and then really locking in on the intonation. So as you're practicing through them, you can go really slow at first and just wait until you lock into that pitch before moving on to the next one. And then as you get comfortable with that, then you can go through and try to play it in time, and then circle back and like really hone in on like finding each pitch. Because it doesn't matter as much that you're hitting each pitch correctly, more so that you're being able to get into it like as quick as possible. So the other thing, especially with like balancing between the two of them when you're droning, is making sure that your throat or your sung pitch is not too quiet. So it's really important that you make sure you're projecting with your sung voice or dropping your volume of your played voice to match. So yeah, just like these are some excerpts from my piece, Letting Go. And I'll just play a little bit of each, of like an example of like droning with the voice versus droning with the instrument. So. And so if you like, especially like on that last, on the upper notes of there, like I wasn't quite locking in. So then if you're practicing, you want to go back through and try to find like find where it like really likes to resonate with itself. And the same thing applies for when you're playing the sustained pitch and singing, especially because you have a lot more flexibility there with the intonation. So as you've like worked on developing these things, there's like other areas to explore and other applications in different pieces that you can kind of work on. So just like a brief overview of them as you kind of work through your own pieces and kind of the repertoire that you're interested in. You can kind of think about different things like trills. So like a piece like Evan Zaporin's Spin Dagoberto has a lot of trilling with like a sustained droning voice, and other things like glistening in and out of intervals. So like a piece that I'll actually be performing in Arizona in January it's called Reflections, and you're going in and out of like unisons, and you can control the beating effect of the difference tone between the sung pitch and the played pitch as you go between them, as you go slowly between the sung and the played pitch. So for example, So that's something you can do with it as well. Something that's been kicking my butt recently as well is doing these bitonal scale exercises that I've been working on. So trying to play like a C major scale and then sing an E major scale at the same time. And so like I've been finding these exercises are fairly helpful. Well, the one they're really tricky to try to make sure that you're keeping track of what pitch you're on for each, especially with your sung voice, because you'll want to harmonize to like the more constant interval and not to the more distant interval, especially when if you're going between like augmented thirds and well, augmented thirds are just fourths, but like um, especially minor thirds or other intervals, like you really have to focus on which one you're doing. So I like doing those. They've been really helping. And then a fun thing that I've been doing is like reading liturgical chants from like the 16th century and the 15th century, especially like two voice motets. Just like choose a voice, sing and play like like sing the cantus firmus and play the other line or vice versa. And then also just combining with other techniques. There's other pieces like Mark Dyer's droning falsities for contrabass clarinet that like has like the player like playing dyads as well as singing on top of that to create like a three voice motet with electronics. So there's stuff like that out there as well. If you scan the QR code, you'll be sent to a Google Doc that's currently like a work in progress of like a compendium I'm hoping to kind of build out of like pieces that extensively incorporate singing and playing. So like I want this to be like a resource for people where because it's like really hard to find these pieces and like for people to like share them, like having a way for people to be like, oh, hey, I didn't know this piece. Like this piece is like really cool, you know. So if you have any other pieces, you can comment in the doc or just like send me a message. I'd love to add it. I'm gonna add this to my website and make it accessible in the future too. So yeah. Other resources to check out, Andy Hudson and Roger Zare, their book Space Base is a pretty good resource. Andy Hudson goes pretty in depth on like his method for developing singing and playing in it, which I think is it presents some other ideas and methods for learning, which are pretty helpful. So if you're trying to work on it, it's a really good etude book to get. And there's an etude in there with a lot of singing and playing that's quite challenging as well. Also, I don't know if I mentioned him earlier, but Jeremy Ruth, he did his DMA dissertation on humming and playing and singing and playing. His dissertation has some good other resources as well for people looking to kind of work on singing and playing and humming and playing. So, yeah, thank you so much for listening. Anybody have any questions? And then if we don't get to them here, like feel free to reach out to me via my email or Instagram and Facebook. Love to talk. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions.
I see both players and composers in the chat. So if you have a question for Nick, feel free to either open your mic and let us hear your voice, or you can type it in the chat. I'll start. I want to know, Nick, what brought you to singing and playing as a technique that you had interest in? What was the genesis for this sort of beginning of your research?
Yeah. So it's actually when I first heard this technique, I really didn't like it. I heard Evan Zapor and Smindau Gamerto for the first time, and I was like, that doesn't sound great. And then I heard his Partial Truths, and I was like, I really like this. Partial Truths is a lot more like consonant, and then like you have to kind of find how like I've really enjoyed now like kind of listening to the dissonances and listening to the beating effects that you can get with the technique. And so like that was kind of like the genesis is like hearing like a more consonant version and then like slowly kind of getting used to it and feeling like, oh wow, there's like so many different like unique sonic possibilities with this technique going forward in different ways.
Do you find it to be easier to achieve this technique with the bass clarinet, with the mouthpiece being bigger and the throat being a little bit more open when you play? Or is it pretty much equally easy and or difficult on either instrument?
Yeah, I find it's easier for me on bass clarinet. My vocal range is also very suited for bass clarinet. It's like it stretches from like a low A on bass clarinet to like a clarion E. So like matching that to B flat is like a little bit harder because there's just less of a range for me to play with between the two of them. But functionally, it's pretty similar between the two of them. So
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? I think this is really, really great. And you've probably heard in a recent ICA events a lot more of this technique being used. So I really appreciate Nick bringing this to everyone. This resource presentation will be available on the ICA website shortly after this presentation has concluded. And I want to invite you all to join us for our final session, which is going to be taking place in just a few minutes on YouTube. I'm going to drop the link in the chat here so you can just follow that over there. I really, really appreciate you joining us today, and we will see you over on YouTube.